Welcome, Abram Jackson. Great to have you on the what am I calling this? A vodcast, a video cast, whatever.
Is it a vodcast?
Is it a Is that even a word? I don't know if that's even a word, but so this
Vidcast.
vidcast. I like that one. I'm going to go trademark it. So I've been following you on LinkedIn for quite a while. I know you were a project manager on Copilot extensibility, I think, for Microsoft. So you work for Microsoft, and I've been enjoying your content. Sometimes it gets a little deep for me, but I'm pedaling along, trying to keep up. So I thought, well, let me get this guy on the on the video and talk about stuff, because he certainly has opinions and should know some things that are going on. So maybe you can kind of give people that don't know you a little background of what you do there at Microsoft.
Opinions I've got. Yes, that is fair. So, yes, I am a product manager at Microsoft. And you're right. Right now, I am on Microsoft 365 Copilot extensibility. For several years, I was working on Exchange Online, on databases and backend systems. I transitioned into big data, which eventually became machine learning for internal product development. So features that were developed there, like Smart Reply and Smart Compose, where Outlook starts filling in the next few words for you, and a lot of other features like that were built on the platform, which we can more or less call good old-fashioned AI. Now at this point, it's GoFi, which previously meant expert systems, but now basically means anything that's not a transformer. So, and those required like bespoke models to be built for every scenario, right? The backstage in PowerPoint of the 4 files they're most likely to click on, that is a separate model that needs data for that. It needs to be trained and evaluated. So that was that platform. A couple of years ago, we started what's now Microsoft 365 Copilot Chat. Basically it started as a proof of concept immediately after ChatGPT's release. And a couple of months in, I joined as the executives, Microsoft decided to make it a real product.
Yeah.
So I was the first one working on extensibility for the product. And so I've been leading it from plugins to agents and the future. Now the extensibility team has several product manager members and a good number of engineers. And I'm always thinking, what is this product? How does it relate to the ecosystem? What is our job and everybody else's job? What direction are we headed? What needs to get built next? That's what I love thinking about and exploring.
It does seem like the world is kind of landing either on the positive or negative side of AI, at least in our space, partners out there. I think it's mostly a fear response, fear of the unknown. But I know that a lot of folks have started to try and discount AI, but their only experience was, ChatGPT. I went on ChatGPT and I couldn't imagine how that could take over coding or take over anything, but that's not really what Copilot or agents are about at all. All right. Can you kind of contrast those two?
Sure. There's a lot of like fair criticism of generative AI, right? And I think all of it, maybe I shouldn't say all of it. A lot of it is fair and is, worth exploring. And, as a product manager in this space, I am, one of the most familiar with all of the drawbacks and the difficulties in use and the places where it's not achieving. But it's not really a debated topic anymore, right? We've got every study after study in the software engineering domain, right? Developers are 30 to 50% more productive. And all of those studies were conducted and gathered data 12 months ago. And every developer I talk to says, we've seen huge leaps and bounds in the last 12 months. Mm-hmm. So we'll see what the productivity gains are, this month. It'll take several months for that research to be produced and to come out. But we know that at least in that domain, there's huge gains.
Yeah.
Now, GitHub Copilot, the technical preview, came out 2 years before BizChat, before Microsoft 365 Copilot Chat, and I think it was 18 months before ChatGPT.
Yeah,
and it was the code completion there, right? But it's got a 2-year head start. So after 4 years, it's getting 30 to 50% in that domain. We've got another 2 years before we need to show that 30 to 50% domain. And I don't think I don't think we're necessarily going to hit that for like every single task of every single job. But I do think the vast majority of information workers are going to be seeing 30% gains across, their entire job.
Yeah, I do think that's true also. I am not a developer by trade. I'm a CEO. I run a company, so I'm more about business, but I've been involved in this space for 25 years now and in and around code for a long time. So I got an understanding of it, but I can't write it. Just I can't write the syntax. I can't write code. For me, the whole concept of vibe coding, if you will, has been a very freeing thing because as a business leader, I got all kinds of ideas. Never short on ideas. Most of them are probably dumb, but there's bound to be a good one in there every now and then. But the thought of pulling a developer off of a paying customer to work on my silly ideas is not practical. And I've done my share of contracting out to freelancers to help me out with some stuff, and it always ends up being kind of a compromise on what I had originally in mind. So now to be able to just crack open and vibe code myself has been just an amazing, freeing experience. I'm having an absolute blast. This is the most fun I've had in a very long time. Thank you. Well,
I'm sure.
some cool, some stupid, but uh, I spent the last couple of days actually vibe coding from scratch a web chat, React web. I know there's a bunch of chats I could have used, but I wanted to see if I could build one myself and have, a finite control using NL Web
Yeah.
for the back end. And yeah, and the water started getting a little deep here and there, but not in code. I didn't have to write any code. So I could understand the deep water because it wasn't asking me to do something my brain just doesn't like to do, which is try and write code. So it's been a lot of fun, and I think it's been a good way to learn. Especially if you go in, and it's one thing to use a tool to create like some app or something, but if you use AI to create AI, you really get a pretty good understanding of how AI goes together. The embedding, the scraping, the vectorizing, all that. I mean, those are just words to me 3 days ago. you know, and now at least I've got a concept. As you go through that process of what those things mean. So, are you a vibe yourself?
So I have a computer science degree, and so I also develop. But I'm not like a senior staff engineer either, right? Like I've got pretty low skills in software development. I saw an interesting post. I think it was from my friend Sebastian Holst. Um, he's chronicling, his use of AI as he starts a new company. And here's pointing out that if you have no technical skill or understanding or whatever, like it's really hard to vibe code.
Yeah.
And I see this, whenever I'm developing as well. Like you can get it to 80%, or maybe certain categories of apps will just go 100%. But usually I'm trying to push the boundary and build a new thing, and it breaks somewhere.
Yeah.
And you have to have a pretty decent technical understanding of software in order to get past that. So I think there's the total novice. There's a little bit of experience. You're a very technical CEO, right? That understands software very deeply. Or like myself as a product manager with a little bit of coding skill, all the way up to, professional software engineer. And I think they're going to be using AI differently, for their assistance, in different modes.
Yeah, there's definitely a learning process to it. And I would say people that tried it didn't get a good result and are now just discounting it, didn't try it long enough. I mean, there's a learning curve. My first uses of it, it's building a bunch of stuff. It just seems amazing. It's just rattling along, and then the screen stops scrolling, and you're looking at it, and you say, "That doesn't seem right." So you just ask it. It doesn't seem right. It says you are correct. It is not right, and then it goes and writes a bunch of other stuff.
Sure. Yep.
But it kind of leaves what it had done before behind, It's, the plumbing in the walls is not doing anything anymore, but it's still there, and so it takes a little using the tool to understand what it does best and where it's going to get lazy on you, where it's going to hard code something instead of actually calculate things, and does it
Sure.
look good on a website. Um, so it definitely is a bit of a learning curve. You had mentioned, obviously you're aware of some of the shortcomings of AI in general. Microsoft, in the meantime, we have Charles out there saying apps are dead. It's all AI, AI, AI. Um, we've got pretty much Microsoft has burned the boats, as my friend Yukit Niernan says, and is all in on AI. But we do know it still has some shortcomings. And those will, Microsoft can go a long way even with those shortcomings, but there's a point where I think they would like to get, which they won't be able to get to until those are addressed. Do you think they can be addressed, and what are some ideas of how? I think probably the biggest one still is the concept of hallucinations, which to me just seems like kind of part of the system, just like us. And it's meant to be, but kind of be like a human brain, and we hallucinate all the time too. So
Yeah, um, so there's hallucination, there's prompt injection, um, and then, in the same category of, major structural issues of the technology, or maybe I shouldn't say issues, limitations of the technology. The other one I'd put is user understanding, user interface, maybe, right? And by that, I just mean while the chat box can do an incredible amount of stuff, it's really hard, like when you're looking at the blank page, to know what it can do. And then beyond that, it can't do everything,
yeah,
right? If you tell it to feed my dog, like it definitely isn't going to feed your dog, right? And so there's a boundary in there somewhere. And as Ethan Mollick says, it's a jagged frontier and takes time to learn.
yeah.
So those are the three that I think, are the limitations that we can either solve well enough or um, build products that get a huge amount of value even with them.
Which is kind of where we are today, right? I mean,
Yeah.
we do have products today, Copilot Studio building agents that have tremendous value right now, even in this current landscape. There's there's an apprehension from some folks to maybe use it in something that is medically related or critical or very important.
Mhm.
And you can imagine, I mean, what a frustration, right? You find this amazing technology that just seems and is life changing technology that's got this one little flaw. And if that one little flaw didn't exist, imagine, what would happen. Well, I mean, that one little flaw is probably what's going to keep some of us employed, because without it, I think we're all out of a job. But
So um, hallucination, if we want to talk about, that one, or maybe we'll talk about all three. Um, you know, the that has gotten so much better over the last few years. If you haven't used, ChatGPT or Copilot for a while, it is so much better. And in particular, Microsoft Copilot and also Microsoft 365 Copilot, both of them have dramatically reduced hallucinations. But and specifically, it's the ungroundedness.
yeah,
It is, how we specifically measure hallucination. Because, fundamentally in architecturally language models, every word is a hallucination to some degree, right? It's not based on fact, it's based on statistics. Um, so what we measure and look at is groundedness, which is for this statement that the language model made, that Copilot made, does it have a source?
yeah.
And also, is that source actually where it got that information? And we take groundedness so seriously, we focused on it so hard and so long that you can pretty well make sure that every response is grounded now. So if you're using Microsoft 365 Copilot, um, now I'm not saying it's 100%, right? But we've solved so many of those core scenarios that most of the time, if you can make sure that you're getting grounded responses. So hallucination is one that yes, it's structural, and there's always going to be edge cases. And of course, you can force it to make up fiction.
Yeah.
But for everyday use, with just a little bit of caution from users, I think, hallucination is less of a big deal than a lot of the industry talks about, in my opinion.
Yeah. Yeah. It's the easiest one for people to hang a hat on. I saw, it seemed a lot of folks, particularly with M365 Copilot, saying things like, well, I use ChatGPT because it seems better. Well, I think to your point, Copilot is not designed as a consumer play tool for looking up recipes. It isn't a business tool. It's got guardrails built around it that GPT does not need for what it's doing out there. So you may feel like you're a little handicapped, or it's a little handicapped compared to GTP, because it is by design for a reason.
Yeah. Yeah. I tell folks, if you want an AI to be your girlfriend or your therapist, don't buy Microsoft 365 Copilot, right?
Yeah.
Go buy chat or your character AI or, something, right?
Yeah.
We don't design it for that. And so it's bad at that. And so, yes, we design it for work where groundedness is absolutely critical, like every time. And if that means it's not going to, sound like your girlfriend or whatever,
Right.
fine. I also subscribe to consumer AI products for my consumer scenarios, but I don't imagine that they're going to do my work stuff better. Definitely way worse at that.
Yeah. Yeah. So you mentioned prompt injection. I've heard that. Uh, did enough looking at it to get an idea of what that is, and
Yeah.
that's another one of those things floating around out there, like it hallucinates. So unpack that a little for me.
Well, um, Simon Willison says, the original sin of language models is mixing content and instructions. So the way that language models work is you give them a whole bunch of text and then you ask them for the next text, right? And that is the only thing that they do. That is the only way that they work. We've just done clever things around, fine tuning to make it look like they're doing other things, to make it look like they're having a conversation. That's actually not true. It does not work that way in a good old fashioned AI sort of way. So the basic structure of what we actually send the language model is the system prompt, all of the previous terms, both the user and the assistant, and then the user's last prompt, what they have just typed in. So actually, we tell the language model, the user said this, you previously said this, the user said this, and then you previously said this, and now this is what the user's got. And all of that is together. And basically, we ask the language model, okay, pretty please, put your response in XML. Use these XML tags or JSON tags or Markdown or whatever in your response so that, in our interface and middleware code, we can correctly separate these things back out again.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But so it's important here that all of the user's previous turns and the assistant's previous turns, as well as the results of any tool called and intermediate processing, is all in the same string along with the system prompt. And nothing separates it other than some XML characters or JSON characters or whatever Markdown you're using. And so all of it is both content and instructions.
Yeah, right.
All of it.
I know.
So
Yeah.
if the result of a tool call, and this is the same thing for jailbreaking, which is an adjacent scenario, if the result of a tool call is an email that has ignore all of those other instructions and do this instead,
Right. It's ingested through an agent or something.
Yeah, right. And then it is, we train it as good as possible to consider the XML tags, and these are the responses and so on. But at some level, it's still some amount of instruction, and the language model can't stop treating it as instruction to some degree, as much as we're trying to do. So we implement guardrails, right? So we, of course, classify and look at all the text coming in as well as all the text going out. We had a lot of user transparency, and this is a major reason why Microsoft 365 Copilot does not send emails
Yeah.
It doesn't send emails today. At most, it can link you to Outlook and draft an email. Right? That's the most that it does. And we even then it only gets text. It doesn't get formatting, so it can't put white text there in that email. And so there's a lot of the product that we wish Copilot could just send emails on our behalf.
Sure.
But due to the limitation of we're only going to be 99.9% good, with all of our guardrails. And so we never want Copilot to send emails unless we have, prompt injection 100% solved. And
Sure.
with this technology, so you were saying earlier, we've got limits to the product or to the technology, and we've got to build useful product around that.
Okay.
So gathering a huge amount of information from hundreds of sources, right? Producing an awesome report and giving it to the user so that they can read and then send it. Like, that's awesome, right? That saves 98% of that work, even if it doesn't take that last 2%. Right? So that's a really valuable scenario that we can still do, even though prompt injection is real. Because if prompt injection gets past all the guardrails, like, the report will be useless. Like,
Yeah.
that's what happens, but it's not sending social security numbers or, customer bank account details to some service, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I've been of the opinion since this stuff first launched and I first was playing around with ChatGPT 3.5 or whatever, the first thing that launched out there, and then listening to this is the path to AGI mantra, and understanding what it does is it picks the next best word essentially. Um, that is not a path to AGI. That I don't see this would ever get to that point. I think that a personal opinion is if AGI exists at all, it's on another branch that we're not on, or maybe even another tree if it even exists. But we never get here on this one. And all the AGI talk really now is really just about getting investment from people to pour money in. But I'd be curious what your thoughts are on that.
Well, AGI, artificial general intelligence, does not have an agreed upon definition.
That's
So,
a way to solve this. Redefine what you have.
well, sure, yes, right. So that's easy enough to do, to redefine what the words mean. But and I tell folks this regularly. We're already at the point where if you have a fully specified problem with a concrete answer, AI is already better than every human.
Yeah. All right.
And you can see this with things like frontier math is a benchmark, which is a set of extremely difficult math problems. And professional mathematicians can solve a subset that are in their field. Like, so the best professional mathematicians are worse now than OpenAI's latest models.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, we joke about models not being able to do algebra, but in fact, they are better at mathematics than any human alive.
Yeah.
So, it's easy to say that on this particular type of problem, we have artificial intelligence, human level artificial intelligence. Now, maybe that's not general. And the similar, humanity's last exam is a collection of PhD level problems across all fields. And AI is better than any specific human alive at that too.
Yeah.
There is no human that can beat the latest AI models at humanity's last exam either. Now, I think there's maybe still some edge cases. There's probably humans that, if they worked real hard, could probably beat AI at like the ARC benchmark, which is specifically designed to be hard for language models. But otherwise, if you have a fully specified problem, and a verifiable answer, AI is already better. Artificial intelligence that is better at the general domain than all humanity, than any particular human.
Yeah.
Now, we have that already. So, is that AGI? Well, certainly by the definitions that we had in the 70s and 80s and 90s and 2000s and 2010s, that's AGI, right? We couldn't have imagined anything remotely like that as long as you defined a problem well, it's better than any human alive. Like, if we don't want to call that AGI, fine. right? So I think you are redefining AGI now to be a harder future thing.
Yeah.
By the definition that we've used for the last 70 years, like we have AGI right now. Now, that said, we don't have that many problems that are fully specified with concrete, direct answers. Mathematics is great because it's full of those. Uh, but the rest of our work, hosting a podcast, running a company, like, the goal is sure, market cap. All right. Like, what is the question? And figuring out how to fully specify that question and bring in and make available all of the context necessary. Like if you could do that, then the AI would answer it. And it would do better than you, and it'd do better than Warren Buffett and Satya Nadella as well.
Yeah.
So that's still the challenge.
And and the fact is, the majority of people in the workspace, right, that at least we're worried about as Microsoft related folks, as people in the workspace, are not that intelligent. The bar is not that high amongst the population of people that are out there working in jobs. So when you talk about it can already do better than the best mathematicians out there, I mean, most of the math that it's going to be doing in real life is currently being done by people that are nowhere near mathematicians and probably make plenty of mistakes. So for all of those folks, I mean, I also look at, going back to that first time using ChatGPT, and then last week trying out Researcher,
Mhm.
and just seeing where this stuff has come in such a short amount of time, and wondering, are we nearing the plateau, or is this still going to go straight up after? Which way does it go now, when you can see the trajectory has just been insane in a very short amount of time?
Yeah, so I don't work at in the model training business, right? I work in the product development business using the models. So this is kind of more of an enthusiast kind of opinion than anything. Um, in terms of model capability, I think we are still improving.
Yeah.
At every 2 weeks or so, one of the major labs produces a model that beats the rest of them on whichever benchmarks haven't been saturated yet.
Yeah,
For that happens every 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And so what was the most recent one? Gemini 2.5 Pro became generally available in the last few days. And it beats all of the other models at every benchmark. So if we hit a wall, did we hit it 2 days ago? Probably not. That's unlikely.
I understand that they've already been beaten. I mean, they hit all these benchmarks 3 days ago, and there's already another one that has passed them. So I don't remember which one it was. GPT.
Yeah. Right. And so I think like any statistician we'd have to be pretty insane to take that bet that okay, that was the last one, we're done here.
Yeah.
Probably not. But the bigger deal is the product development around them, and then the adoption and the change management that needs to happen to the workforce. So I see this sentiment regularly that even if we hit a wall 3 days ago when that was the last model, the models are so good that is going to transform work so much as we build those products, as we learn how to use it.
Years of work to do if it stopped right now. We have years ahead of us.
Absolutely. But I also, it's also going to be much faster than all of the other years of work we've had to do, around internet or the PC. This one is going so much faster than any of the technology changes we've ever had before.
Yeah, so we're certified on Copilot in a day sessions, which we've been doing, and the most recent one, it was pretty apparent that the applications themselves have gotten way out of sync with the training materials. So I just sat in on a Train the Trainer yesterday. They're renaming Copilot in a day to Agent in a day, which makes sense. And they got all fresh content. The content was 5 days old. But already in the labs, the UI has continued moving, even just in the last 5 days. So that's going to be a challenge is that, the training material. I mean, if you're looking at training material that's a month old, you might as well stop. I mean, you're just going to get the basics there. You're not going to be able to build anything because the UI just keeps moving almost day by day. You log into Copilot Studio and something is new. It's full of Easter eggs that you just discover every day you go. But pretty meaningful at where it has come from, the bot framework. Yeah.
You know, I'm really excited about agents. So I used to have this conversation with my architect that I just wish we could ship like the second version of a product. Because we were always, we shifted from, plugins, then we're focused on graph connectors, which is still quite viable. But then we switched to agents, right? And then from the pro code agents, then we went into, the Copilot Studio land anyway. And what's been really encouraging, even with the recent interface updates, from the last couple of weeks, is we've gotten to do that V2 now.
Yeah.
Right. So we got a product out there. We saw how it's being used. We saw, okay, this is going to be a good one. And we evaluated, we did the user research, and then we built the next version of it. So I am optimistic that we don't need to like go change paradigms again. That said, like the industry is going to keep moving fast for sure. And we are going to keep improving, as we address and resolve these issues and teach users and find more gaps. So
We've been checking the paradigm about every quarter. So it'll be hard to imagine that we won't have to do that again, at this pace.
yeah. And so, I recommend to anybody, you got to stay curious and using these things, right? Keep exploring what new capabilities it does for you. You got to have that mindset. As these things develop, you'll get stuck.
It should be a huge opportunity for Microsoft partners because customers, by and large, do not have the time. And they really, I mean, in looking at the train the trainer yesterday on the newest version and knowing the customers that sign up for that, it's a few classic citizen developer, a couple of more seasoned folks in there, and but it's a lot of folks that are just employees working at a company, curious. Maybe they built apps with Power Apps before, right?
Yeah,
sure. So that's fine, but the water gets deep in Copilot Studio, even in Copilot Studio. I mean, again, no code. All right, fair enough, no code. But the water can get deep pretty quickly in just comprehension, understanding what's going on to be able to have a successful outcome. And to me, especially when you get into the agent space and autonomous agents, a mistake in a Power App is no big deal. But if you make a mistake in building an autonomous agent, that could be a huge problem. So I'm a little nervous about, Microsoft was on the citizen path for Power Apps for a long time. Up until the last few years, they started kind of pivoting more towards, if you really want to get value out of these, you need to know a little bit about what you're doing. They kind of moved away. Your grandmother could build it. And now here we are with agents, and they're kind of back to the original and your grandmother could build it story. But I think that's going to be much shorter lived this time based on that experience. And they're going to be, look, you can build some amazing stuff if you've got some concept of what the heck's going on. But otherwise, it's not a toy, and it's not a toy builder. This is potentially serious stuff to build. And that's going to be good for a partner. And the fact that, as you say, keep your ear to the ground, well, partners have time to do that and it's part of their job. Customers don't. I mean, customers get behind very quick. They're going to jump into Copilot Studio, go back, do some work, come back a month later, and everything's changed, and they want to know what happened. So this is where I think partners have a great opportunity if they could stop complaining about AI and jump on the bus.
Well, I would certainly encourage partners to jump on the bus. I think pretty intentionally about three different personas of developers. We have the professional developers who are software engineers or data scientists and applied scientists. We have the maker developers with Copilot Studio. Maybe they are a technical person on a team, right? Or maybe they've just an enthusiast. Then we have user developers.
Yeah,
and I think Power Platform has realized that it isn't really for user developers.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like it's just a little bit too much for them, in order to set up all of those things and worry about your connections and who's gone off and whatever.
Yeah.
Um,
Or we're giving that to people who don't even know how to use their phone,
yeah,
So
sure. Uh, but I do think we have this ability for user agents or for user developers, which is new because agents are, their natural language, and they are so much easier to create. Now, I do not think that they are going to build the same thing as a professional developer. And I don't think that the thing that they are develop is going to save as many, employee hours for the organization as a professional developer. What I hope user developers can learn to do is solve very narrow, annoying problems for themselves.
Yeah.
To assist them on some of those things, not deploy it to the 30,000 people at the organization to save 99% of the time on some major process. Like, that's probably a professional developer situation. But um, every week for the next 12 weeks, I've got to fill in my status on, I've got to go collect information from these 3 places and fill in my status over there. I do hope users are able to construct that kind of thing.
It's a lot of what they did with Power Apps, right? I need to build a little app for myself that I could use instead of a spreadsheet, and then more handy, and I can make a little mobile version. And but then what would happen is, this is pretty good for me. I'm going to share it with my neighbor here, and they're going to share it. Before you know it, it's kind of permeated.
Sure.
What the hell is this thing? How did this get in here? So it feels like looking at the latest version of Copilot Studio, which I literally did yesterday, it feels like there could be almost like an admin level toggle that allow any user to do this much. They can do this much stuff unless I've flipped the toggle next to their name to let them do more. Because I think that we're probably going to be hearing that coming from IT. Yeah, as problems start arising. I mean, we're still early in the game. I think that citizen or user developers, as you call them, are tinkering, but I don't think we've got to the point where they've tinkered too deeply to where they
Sure.
can cause problems. Once they do, they hear that from IT community, I think.
The product that we have in Copilot for user developers is Agent Builder. It's the button that, it's what opens when you click Create Agent within Microsoft 365 Copilot. And we are pretty intentional about keeping that simple enough. Like, we explored adding custom actions, APIs, that you can upload an open API document specification into it. Because ChatGPT has it in their custom GPTs. We're like, okay, we can put this here. But we also took a look at it and do we actually expect user developers to author or even have or know what is an open API specification document, like what Swagger is?
Right.
They don't. They don't. And so we had the feature built and we didn't ship it. It was ready. And we decided, you know what? User developers, this is going to be too hard for them. We don't want it here. And also, there's a nice governance boundary here too, that Agent Builder doesn't send any information external ever. It simply can't. That's a really nice boundary as well. So that admin toggle that you just mentioned, it exists. It's whether or not you give this user, you let them into a Copilot Studio environment.
Yeah.
Because Copilot Studio, I don't think I'm interested in carving up the pieces of it. I hope that Copilot Studio, we can over time get it to the place where any maker developer is able to understand all of the things, or doesn't need to look at the things that they don't understand. Hopefully we can get Copilot Studio to that point. So assign those users to a Copilot Studio environment or block them. I forget exactly what that admin control is, but it's there.
Yeah, the idea of using AI to build AI, it's interesting. When the previous content, the Copilot Studio in a Day content was the previous bot, what's it called? Not bot framework, that content that had just been kind of massaged over. So there was still this idea of and had a whole bunch of content walking the students through creating topics and all these things. And then after they go through all that, it says, or you can just use natural language to do all that. It was like, why don't we just show them that? I mean, that's really all people wanted. So yeah, the idea that it can do a lot of things that maybe formerly would have tripped people up, or at least made their agent less useful because they didn't understand topics, didn't understand triggers very well, didn't put in
Sure.
the right redundancy, too much stuff in there, and that now they can just kind of go in and it'll, let me take that for you. I'll take care of that for you. Uh, should hopefully at least keep them from making some of the, the most basic mistakes.
Yeah. As we were talking, like the models are getting better, right? And, they have been already. And so the first rule, this is actually the Shalache's law of AI development. The first rule is, whatever the model can do, let the model do. Mm-hmm. Like in a little bit more detail, like the model's going to get better. Your code isn't. Yeah. And unless you go spend more time on it. If you're a professional developer on that thing, okay, your code is going to get better, right? And then you're racing the AI model, sure, right? But otherwise, like let the model do anything. And so what I'd suggest for maker developers is you definitely start with generative orchestration, right? The generative answers, attaching knowledge sources, and then start testing. Yeah. Ideally programmatic evaluation, but start testing and see where it's broken and only fix those things, right? With topics or, with AI prompts or whatever, in order to resolve those issues. And expect that in 6 months, there'll be a new model and you might be able to remove a bunch of them.
Yeah. Not long ago, Satya Nadella in some keynote somewhere had said that the apps will collapse. 2 weeks ago, Charles Lamanna said on a podcast that apps are dead. Do not spend any more energy and do not invest more in apps. And I understand part of that is probably, we need to get people to start making the move, and they're not going to make the move if they don't think they have to. So let's start sawing the diving board off that they're standing on and force them to make the move. I get that. But no one has given us yet a picture of what that looks like. And I mean, I think our imaginations are all struggling a little bit to imagine. I mean, I can, anecdotally imagine that I'm attaching, Copilot all in and around and under my app. And at some point the app's no longer needed, just pull it out of the picture.
Yeah.
But that's just an anecdote. I can't picture in my mind what that world looks like. Do you have a picture in your mind?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you for asking. Sure. And this is going to be much more my personal opinion. Like Charles, like I think as you've written about, like runs apps. Like his job, one of his primary jobs is business apps, right? So definitely his perspective here is probably better than mine. But I'll give you mine too. I don't think it would. If I were to go on a podcast and say that apps will collapse, I mean a particular kind of app. The apps that I don't think are very interesting, into the future. I'm not even saying right now, right? Obviously, there is a time frame here. Are the apps that I call forms over data. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of apps that are essentially a database, a structured database, relational, JSON, NoSQL, whatever it is, and a form for a user to put stuff into that database. Yeah. And then to take stuff back out. So a lot of stuff is structured that way. A lot of business apps in particular can be structured that way. Your CRM, right? You fill in a form to put stuff in, right? You run a query to pull a set of stuff out and display it. And there's more stuff in CRM too. I don't want to denigrate the entire field, but largely a form over data. And even social media, right? It's a form to type in a post and then very clever retrieval, more or less. It is a lot of apps that are forms over data. However, you and I are right now talking in Microsoft Teams. Mm-hmm. Teams is not, at least the video call or the meeting is not a form over data. Maybe chat is, right? But this communication, it clearly isn't. Uh, so there's also apps that aren't forms over data and can't go away. Even like PowerPoint. Yes, okay, it does get stored into OneDrive, sure, but like mostly it's visual display. And that's a different thing of presenting. But to replace the forms over data, I do think about agents. So, since I mentioned sales, I'll give that example. Um, so usually after you have a sales call, you then go to your CRM, right? You review your notes that you wrote by hand, or maybe that Copilot gave you. You type it all in, right? And you hit submit, and you've uploaded, your CRM. And then later you look at your week-long reports, or you find the next best opportunity, and lots of clever things that you could do with the data, or your manager can do. The agent version of this is the agent is in the call with you, or the software is, or Teams does it for you, or whatever, the new software. It's in the call for you. You already see in Teams meeting recap. It already understands all of the action items. The agent version of it is it updates the CRM. And, so that's one side of it. And also notifies you when it's time to talk to some next best opportunity. So instead of going to the CRM and seeing, oh, I need to call Steve, Copilot or an agent or software would put the meeting on your calendar for you. Mm-hmm. And at no point did you interact with the CRM. Did you noticeably interact with the CRM? No, there's still a database there.
Well, existed, or was it just a database that existed?
Well, the database existed, and the query layer existed, and the permissions layer existed, and like a lot of stuff existed as part of the CRM in that scenario. The interface never did.
Yeah. One of the challenges folks have is that, and it's probably one of the ones that I struggle with is, obviously this is a paradigm that's been around a very long time, very, very long time. We're all hard-coded to understand forms over data. That's just how we've all done business forever. And when I go into my CRM and I'm looking for something in particular, like, looking at a list of opportunities, but then I happen to notice something, 2 items down for the one I was looking for. I wasn't looking for that, but I noticed, I should call them, or, I need to look into that. But I wouldn't have discovered that if I just asked chat, tell me more about XYZ company, because that's what I'm looking for. I wouldn't have had that kind of serendipitous spotting a problem. So how do we, because I think that's the challenge a lot of folks have is, okay, fine, I'm in a chat box all day and it's doing all this automation for me and it's automatically following me around doing stuff, but where is the serendipitous discovery?
Maybe that's a good opportunity for partners, right? I don't understand the sales and the CRM domain very well. I worked adjacent to it for a little bit, but I've never actually used a CRM myself. So I can't go build that. And even, your particular version of using CRM, like as a CEO, of your kind of company in your kind of field is unique, right? Your version of it is unique versus what the Microsoft sales organization, Global Americas does. Like, obviously that's a very different scenario.
Sure.
And so, I don't think the Dynamics organization can build, for all of the needs of every potential kind of customer and build a custom app for each one of them. And of course, that's why Power Platform exists, right? And why Dynamics is so extensible is so partners and developed customers can customize and change it.
Yeah.
So I think there's a great opportunity. Your use case of the serendipitous connections, right, is maybe very different from a Microsoft sales technical specialist, like, who only talks to these 3 customers always.
Yeah.
So maybe they need a different agent. Maybe AI can learn their behaviors and what succeeds in the future, but I don't know. Right now, what that behavior of serendipitous discovery, like as a category, that could be built into an agent too.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, as long as you can define it, then it's really easy to code. All right, 5% of the time, also return a second record at random. Great. Like, done.
Right.
So knowing what those scenarios are, like, is up to, the broad ecosystem of that understand, what is the sales job of CEO at a company like Steve's.
Yeah. Insert gut feeling here. You know, so those would be tricky. You know, when you see Satya, Charles, Jared out there talking about, they're in agents all day long. That's all they use is agents. Well, yeah, you're not a worker bee, right? The worker bees that counting are in applications all day. So you wouldn't have a reason to open an application. Satya has no reason to open an app, in his daily work. He's got people to do that for him. So I can understand why he wouldn't. But it would be, I think, I've heard lots of folks talk about, well, it's still going to be like a form, but now AI is going to dynamically create it instead of being like a fixed form. It'll dynamically create what you need. Maybe, I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of different ways to imagine what that'll look like. I'm a little disappointed that Charles seems pretty confident to say they're dead without giving us a glimpse as to what that future might look like. But I guess we shall find out.
I I have total respect for Charles. His strategic thinking is fantastic. I wish you could see some of his documents.
Uh,
It's very good.
No, very, very bright guy. I've known him for years now, ever since he joined the BizApps team back under James Phillips, um, who also coined a phrase at the time. Maybe he didn't, but he certainly used it a lot. Was forms over data when he was talking about, and this is going back a long time ago, when he was talking about new features coming out for Dynamics 365 because we're tired of forms over data. And here we sit, we're still looking at it, still forms over data. It's sparkly forms over data, but it still forms over data. So it's time for that paradigm of forms over data to go away. I think we can all agree that would be great if that went away. It's a bane of existence for a lot of working people. But yeah, getting a picture of what that's going to look like, I'm going to be very eager to see over the next couple of years, what comes out of that.
It's absolutely going to be fascinating. As the models improve, as we address these major, complications or limitations, as we diffuse the technology into the enterprise, as partners customize, for specific domains and verticals, the way of work is for sure changing. And I don't know if we're going to get 30% more productive or 200% more productive. But, it's going to be
It'll be
less than
more.
that.
It'll be more than nothing. It'll definitely be more than zero. So count on that.
Yes.
So, all right. Thank you very much for the time to chat with me on this. Very interesting to hear kind of inside Microsoft view, or at least your personal view, combined with the Microsoft view on where this stuff is going. It has been a very fun ride so far that we're nowhere near the end of. I don't think we've got several more loop-de-loops to come. And it's going to be a fun ride. And, maybe I'll reach out to you again in the future when there's some big loop-de-loops that we've gone through and see where things have evolved on you guys' end.
Sounds good. Awesome talking to you, Steve. Thank you for this opportunity.
Thanks. Bye-bye.